Thank you so much for joining us on It's Time today. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsley Donnelly, your citizen scientist and your longevity expert for midlife women.
And I'm Dr. Jen Wagner, physician and holistic performance expert. Welcome to It's Time, powered by Prosper. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to It's Time. We are so excited to have Jae Berman back with us today. As you know, she is our famous go-to nutritionist who we love to talk not only nutrition with, but our attitudes and feelings and emotions around food and what all of this does to how we interact with food, how we talk to ourselves, how we think about our bodies, especially going through this midlife transition.
Yes. Thank you, Jae, for coming back. We've got lots of questions.
Yay. Happy to be here.
So one thing that we talk a lot about, and I think right now is pivotal to go into some of this, is the news, social media, everything is flooded with new health, wellness, and nutrition information. It's hard for us as quote unquote experts in this field to sort through this. I think then you couple that with this grateful attention on menopause. But again, everyone is right now a menopause expert as well. And so I think especially women in this time period, we're getting bombarded from every direction, from every type of person imaginable, from politics to our hairdressers to fitness professionals. I mean, you name it, we are getting bombarded with this information. So we're going to kind of walk through some of the controversies. We're going to walk through one thing that we talk with you a lot about, this restrictionist mindset when it comes to food and how some of these fads and technologies are playing into that. And then go through some of these really popular controversies, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I love the idea of being able to get some of the science around the controversies, but I also love Jae's framing of how's it working for you, right? Because everyone's body is different and everyone's body is different for them at different points of time. So there are no mandates, and then there also are no permanent answers. So I love that flexibility and freedom to experiment and figure out, how do you feel? That's the ultimate guideline.
Yeah. And not only is everybody's body a little different, also behaviorally and motivationally, we're all different. So what might work for you to build a habit is just not going to work for me, and vice versa. So not only do you have to pay attention to like, how's my body responding to all of these different changes, but then also if like you don't want to do the workout, eat the food, the habit that you're trying to create, then likely something is wrong with your approach around the behavior. So there's a lot of personalization that people need to pay attention to themselves. And we get a little caught up in all the external stories from the news, social media, and beyond, that it's just hard to remember, like, wait, what actually works for me? And then, ironically, just to like put salt on the wound, that stress of like, this person said this, and this person said this, and this person said this, and I read, 15 different online stories, and they made me, that's causing your blood sugar to rise, which is disrupting your hormones. So it's like, you think you're doing a good job, and you're actually maybe like not exposing yourself to any of it to a certain degree, or very limited amounts of it would actually help you get the goal that you want. But that's not normally how most of us do things.
That's right.
I love you bringing that up. And so we're going to kind of rehash a story that Jae and I have shared back and forth for months. And it started because Lindsley is a rock star at doing dry January. And so I was like, okay, I am going to commit to dry January. And I'm going to let Jae take it from here, because she has walked me through this saga that continued for months after dry January.
I know. And it was all like this email story that I just was like, oh my God, this just is like snowballing into something worse and worse and you both have the best of intentions, right?
Yes,
but like, First, it started with
I was like, I got questions.
First, it started with dry January, and again, when you filled me in, you were already a couple steps ahead. But like, of course, there's nothing wrong with dry January, and again, it's often very good because alcohol. My line around alcohol is no one needs to quit, but everyone can drink less, right? Because it is a toxin. Yeah. So most of us drink too much, and it's very habitual. So doing something like dry January is great. However, in this day and age of fads, there's a lot of people who are going dry January, and like they drink one drink a week, and all of a sudden they're like, I need to quit. It's the worst. And to our conversation, because mocktails are so popular,
yes,
you jumped on the mocktail train, right? which again, nice in theory, especially if drinking alcohol is really difficult for you. Of course, you don't have the toxin, but many of those mocktails have a bunch of sugar in them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, well, I'm giving up alcohol, but I'm bumping up the sugar, but people think they're healthy because they're quote unquote mocktails. Okay. And then in the CGM craze, right, you guys got a little bit like, well, wait a minute. Now my blood sugar is going up. And then I think it was Jen, right? You went to tea.
Yes. I'm so
And
excited.
then
So proud of myself.
So
My
proud of
herbal tea.
yourself. Yes. And then you were reading about the microplastics in tea bags.
And then I just gave up. And I'm like, I'm going back to Chardonnay. Because
You can't win.
At least I know the enemy there.
That's right. And that's what you wrote as your last line in the email. And I was like, oh God, I didn't know. You went from like, so I think that while all of these things are important, there are people out there that their plastic exposure might seriously be causing like major hormonal and health disruption in their body. So that needs to be addressed. And there's people who are drinking way too much alcohol and it's causing damage. And there's people whose blood sugars are through the roof and it's causing damage. So it's important. That's where data is helpful because you can figure out like what is your actual issue that you're trying to adjust. But the way it's presented to the world is everyone needs to do everything at all times and you need to do it perfectly. And you're a bad person if you don't do it perfectly. And it's like, dude, I can't. Like, there aren't enough hours in the day. So I think part one is taking some time to actually address yourself and what are the areas you need help on, right? So if you're going specifically to menopause, right, there's surveys of symptoms that people are experiencing that are like the most common symptoms. So understanding what is your issue, right? There's some women who are going through this time of life who literally have stopped sleeping, right? There's some women who've gained 5 to 10 pounds around their waist for no apparent reason. There's some women who've completely lost libido and their marriage is suffering deeply, right? Like everyone's got their different thing, but no need to take on stuff that you don't have, right? I mean, like it's already one of those symptoms alone is bad enough. Like why take on stuff that you don't need to take on, right? And my husband picks on me with this all the time. Like he's like, you don't have that problem. I'm like, right. But what if I did? He's like, but you don't. You don't. Like, why are we even talking about this? I'm like, right. So, I mean, it's so easy to fall into it because the way, media is presented this way. So first of all, it's assessing your situation, whether it's symptoms going through menopause, whether it's, do you actually have diabetes or prediabetes? Are you actually overweight? Are you actually losing muscle mass? Are you actually losing your hair, right? Like, I mean, there's so many different things that are going on. Do you actually have high cholesterol, right? Yeah. As opposed to just all of a sudden doing things that are making you worried. So I think it's, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, really assessing what are the areas that you need to support yourself with. And then, or the areas that are of concern, and then think of ways to support yourself in those areas depending on what's going on. So that's a really helpful way to personalize it, even if you don't have a concierge doctor or something like that, but just like really paying attention to what's actually going on with you rather than everybody else. I have so many clients who are like, gut health. I'm so worried about gut health. I'm like, oh, tell me more. Are you having issues with your digestion? No. Do you experience bloat? No. Do you have regular bowel movements? Yes. I'm like, I think you're doing okay. So I think people just really get worried. So there's that. And then when it comes to thinking about food choices, whether you know your personalized data points or not, sticking to the tenets, which we started to talk about last time, right? But staying as whole and real as possible. Okay. At all times. And let's talk about that more. I know you guys brought up like travel and some other things. So let's talk about that. And then 2, making sure that when you look at your plate, you see protein, you see carb, and you see fat. So I have this theory. I have not run a research study on it, but I feel very confident in it that when you give your body protein, carbs, and fats, you're basically telling your body you're safe.
Got it.
You're giving it everything it needs in that moment so that it can do all the things that it needs to do. And then you can come back, depending on your schedule, but 3 to 5 hours later and do it again. But every time you fuel your body with a balanced plate, meaning protein, carbs, and fats present, your body stress hormones go down, your glucose can do what it needs to do. All your hormonal function can work better. So you can actually, you can't lose weight if your body thinks it's stressed.
Right.
The body's going to hold on to fat when it's stressed. You can't work from a effective metabolism if your body thinks it's stressed. So again, using fuel as safety and as a sense of calm, which goes so against American culture, right? We look at food from like, I'm bad because I ate lunch, you know?
Right.
It's like, you're not bad. Your body needs fuel. So give your body what it needs. And then hopefully that should lead to kind of more balanced behaviors long term.
I just want to reinforce that one more time, because we live in a society and we have all grown up with these eat less, lose weight, restrict, this happens, that mindset that if we are not punishing ourselves, whether it's food wise, exercise wise, we are not doing enough. And we really have to embrace the opposite mindset, is that for our bodies to be healthy, they have to feel safe, which means they have to fuel. I mean, you look at it in animals, right? If dogs are starving, they hoard and they get aggressive and they, their social caveats break down, et cetera. So our bodies work the same way, that if we're not giving it what they have, it's going to hold on to everything. So even if we're working out, we're going to break down muscle. Even if we're working out, we're going to gain fat because our brains think we're starving. So and that has been one of the hardest things for even myself personally to overcome.
Oh yeah.
Is that I have to fuel. And I see it in my kids who are competitive athletes who have already had low energy availability injuries, not because they're not eating enough.
That's right. Yeah.
So I don't think we can stress that enough.
Yeah. And I mean, even for the people who are listening who are like, oh no, I'm fine, I don't struggle with that. You do. Like everyone struggles with this. This is just unfortunately the worlds we live in. And I think it's a global issue. It's definitely an American issue, but I think we live in a society where restricting is a sign of pride, and like doing the boring balanced thing is a sign of weakness. So, I mean, I actually say like it takes courage to pause and say, I'm going to eat a balanced lunch right now, even though you all are going to, power through the work meeting. I'm going to stop. I tell clients it's a brave thing to do that, which feels ridiculous. There's other things that should require bravery in this age. But honestly, pausing for a balanced meal is it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
What were you going to ask?
Well, because when we were kind of thinking through the conversation, there are so many things I think we get conflicting information on. So, I mean, even in this context, right? Intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, all of that plays into this restrictive sitting down and eating 3 meals. Like if you try to do that and you're trying to follow any other kind of time-based protocol, it's hard to figure out the math. So, there are a lot of those kinds of questions where I think women, especially menopause, midlife women, are getting conflicting information. And I'm sure that they're just like, I don't even know what to follow. And so we talked about it with dry January. I think the question that I sent to Jay too, when I was just like, my daughter is only eating one type of protein, but it's smoked salmon and that's processed meat. And should I stop? And I'm stressing about that. And you had the great response on like, look, protein is, eat whatever protein you can get your child to eat, they should eat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so the time restricted eating, and it's funny, I saw Sachin Panda, who's one of the like leaders in the fasting research. I saw him speak at like a stealth conference. His research hadn't even gone live yet. This was like about 10 years ago. And I was like, wow, he showed this like gorgeous slide of the 2 mice. And again, it was a 12-hour fast. Okay. So the mice one mice were fed 24/7 and the other mice were given 12 hours on and 12 hours off. And the mice that had the 12 hours on, 12 hours off were leaner and more energetic. And the mice that were given food 24/7 were overweight. Okay. And again, the reason it was a 12-hour fast was because I think the story goes that the postdoc fellow who was leading the lab, her kids, she wanted to be home for her kids. So it really could only be a 12-hour fast. Okay. So when I saw the study, when I saw him present, I was like, oh, that's so great. I mean, it's not rocket science, but like how awesome. That's so beautiful. Okay. And then a handful of years later, people are like, I'm eating in a 2-hour window. I was like, whoa. Like, how did that happen? And even I would try it. I always try stuff. So I'm like, and I was like, and again, I try things, but I am not a super competitive person. So like, if it doesn't go well, I don't force myself through it. Right. Like I am immediately like, this isn't working for me. So I bowed out real quick. But so many of my clients were starving themselves. And women in particular, I would ask every single female client when they tell me they fast, my first question is, how's it going for you? Right. And I would say 90% of them are like, not great. Like, I'm really hungry and I'm not losing. I mean, the line I hear all the time is, I'm really hungry and I'm not losing the weight my husband did.
Yeah.
Like, my husband has lost all this weight and I haven't.
Mhm.
And so I know now there's a lot of discussion around it, but I think it goes back to the tenets that I've been following since I got into this profession 20 years ago, which is, again, when you wake up in the morning, your body is saying to you, am I safe or am I starving? Like, am I stressed or and the reason it's saying that is because it hasn't eaten for, hopefully you haven't eaten for a good 8 hours. Maybe you actually had a 12-hour fast. Okay. So your body, if you don't give your enough body food for even 3 to 4 hours, the body starts to go, what's up?
Yeah.
So every human, no matter how gorgeous your home is, no matter how much money you have in the bank, every human wakes up and it's like, am I safe or am I in trouble? And the only way you're going to let your body know you're safe at that moment is to eat breakfast. That's it.
Yeah.
And again, if you just give your body sugary cereal, or let's use a more bougie example, but chia seed pudding with agave and berries and, all sorts of fruit, that's a lot of sugar, right? So whether it's sugary cereal or whether it's, 2 cups of fruit, the body's going to say, whoa, okay, that's a lot of glucose. Thanks. I needed that. Like, I've got things to do with that glucose, but like, where's my essential fatty acids? Like, where's my amino acids? Like, I've got hormones to metabolize. I've got muscle to build. I've got inflammation to repair. I've got millions of things I need to do in the system. And you need carbs, fats, and proteins to break down to do all the things that we need. So chia seed pudding can be a fat source, but then make sure that you have some protein in there and make sure you have some carbohydrate in there and it's more balanced. Or sugary cereal isn't going to help you much, but like a whole grain fiber rich cereal, as long as there is some protein and fat also present in that bowl, will help make it balanced.
So let's transition that into today's world where we're traveling, we are getting up to grab something to go to the gym or the office, etc. How do we then take this idea of, I need to fuel shortly after I wake up? I know whole foods are best, but I sometimes don't have the time, the bandwidth, the opportunity if we're traveling, maybe the socioeconomic status to be able to create these beautiful balanced things. And then we add in, I'm going to add another layer to this whole idea of processed foods are terrible. Like, for a while it was like, grab your beef jerky and eat something with it.
Yeah, and then it's
now
like,
it's like, no, don't eat the beef jerky. It's processed. And so it's like this ping pong again of, okay, I'm on the go. I'm busy. I'm traveling away from my home environment. What can we do? What's the best philosophy around that? Other than to take a deep breath and say you're doing the best you can. But outside of that, like, what are some tips and tricks to say, okay, I know I'm in a hurry? Or I think about this with my kids too, who get up like 5 minutes before they walk out the door. And I want to be able to hand them something on the way out that they can at least eat in the car. So there's something in there. What are some ideas for that stage?
Yeah. And I'm laughing in my head as you're talking I feel like this at this point in time, I need to say this. One, I am not a perfectionist, right? So the perfectionists that are on the call listening, right? Some of my answers are going to be really uncomfortable for them, right? And I get it. Like, I say it with compassionate. I have some perfectionist tendencies, but I know that some of the answers I'm going to give are difficult, right? And then I had an experience early in my 20s when I was like in school. My program at Columbia is heavily focused on sustainable agriculture. And when I moved back to San Francisco after school, I used to go to all these, at that time, it was like the beginning of the sustainable foods industry in San Francisco, which was just blowing up 20 years ago. And I remember going to some talk early on and someone talking about saying how like whole wheat flour is the best flour, right? And like someone said something in the question about like unprocessed foods like whole wheat flour. And I remember the woman who was like a food maker. I mean, I think she made bread. She was like, well, all flour is processed. So, and I remember my, 26-year-old self being like, well, that's not going to work for me. You know what I mean? Like, that is a level of nuance that I can't take on Because if I start thinking whole wheat organic flour is processed and bad, I'm totally screwed, right? So 20 years ago, I think I just like had a real like light switch. Jay, you got to make this work because this is going to go bananas. Now, again, I didn't really realize it was going to be as bananas as it is now, 20 years later, right? But like people have to give themselves a break, on two levels. So let's just say you're not traveling and money isn't an issue and you have total control over your food. And actually, you know what? I don't even need to give those disclaimers. The answer applies no matter what the situation is. No matter what, when you look at a label, even if it is a protein bar or a protein powder or jerky or whatever, when you look at the ingredients, I decide if that's a processed food or not, if I understand everything that's in those ingredients. So there's many protein bars out there that when you read the ingredients, they're made of whole real foods. They just happen to process them into a big glob that's, non-perishable that you can take on the go with you. Jerky can be made beautifully, or there's like a real toxic version of jerky, right? So I think my answer would be no matter if you're traveling or not, it's do the best you can so that as many of the foods you're eating are whole and real, whether it's a protein bar, whether it's a cracker, whether it's a whatever, right? Like there's a cracker that I eat, but if you look at the ingredients, everything is nuts and seeds. It's just ground nuts and seeds. I've actually tried to make it myself. It's too much drama for me. So I buy them, in bulk, right? Same with protein bars, same with protein powders, right? Like there's protein powders that have like 100 ingredients in them. And then there's protein powder that's made of one ingredient.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's no matter what the circumstance is, do your best to try to eat things that are made of as many whole real ingredients as possible.
Yeah,
My
that's
definition of
important stuff.
processed is the stuff you don't understand on the label.
What about, say you find yourself in a place where maybe there's limited access to fresh foods and you have the supermarket choices of going in the canned aisle or going in the frozen aisle. I was always taught, and I don't know where I picked this up, and I don't even know if it's right, that choosing like some of the frozen options maintain a lot of their nutritional qualities better. So are there particular foods that you would say, I guess I'm even thinking about like making a smoothie. Like sometimes I just pull out the frozen berries and the frozen spinach because it just adds the cold crunch already to it. Are there frozen options that are just as good or better that people can turn to as well to have on hand?
Yeah. So that is true so frozen food, like to be food safe, I think is the right word, that needs to be flash frozen the second it's picked. So yes, many frozen foods are actually quote unquote healthier than the fresh food that maybe was picked 2 to 3 weeks ago and was shipped in who knows what situations.
Okay.
This just goes to show I've really limited my media consumption. So I didn't quite realize frozen and canned food was getting such a bad rap. Frozen food is awesome. I mean, it's great. Now, again, in a perfect world, you would choose organic produce and then ideally would just have one ingredient. So if you look at a bag of organic berries, it can say, organic strawberries, organic blueberries, organic whatever, and that's it. And then there's some frozen fruit blends that are going to have added sugars, added fillers, added weird stuff. And again, the reason those added things are quote unquote bad is for two reasons. One, they're literally only there to make food makers money.
Okay.
All of those processing things, what I define as a processed food, which again, in simple terms is just the things you don't understand on food labels. Those are there to make food either taste better or to make shelf life longer so that food makers can make money off the famous line is a box of Ritz crackers, right? Like a box of Ritz crackers could be like 30 years old because of the hydrogenated fat and no one would know. It would still be as crispy as ever. And that's just to make food makers money, right? That has nothing to do with our health. So you want to choose all of those things. Plus the truth is we don't know the impact of those processed foods on our bodies, right? We think they're not good. And there's some little bit of evidence, but for the most part, we still don't know, but there's thousands of fillers out there that are causing people issues. And avoiding them and eating more whole real foods is likely going to work in your favor. However, give yourself a break too. Because if you're traveling, and this happens a lot with my clients, I work with a clientele that is kind of focused on longevity and optimization and wants to do all the things. And I would say half of my clients travel 50 to 75% of the year.
Yeah.
There's just no way that they're going to live the most optimized life on the road, because when you're on the road and eating at restaurants, the food isn't going to be as healthy. And again, it's even if you're going to the place that's serving all the gorgeous healthy food. I mean, let's just talk about oil, right? Like if a restaurant used organic olive oil and organic avocado oil and organic butter for all of their fats, they wouldn't make any margins. There's just no way. They wouldn't make any money. If restaurants were using organic flour for all of their bread and all of their wheat, pasta and whatever, the margins wouldn't work for them in the food industry. So they have to use a cheaper product to help with, even if they're doing the best they can. It's just very unlikely that that level of quality isn't going to be bad. Now, should you be afraid of restaurants? I wouldn't, because that would take out a huge amount of joy in your life. And travel, like so many people, when I ask them, what's your longevity goal? Like if you live till 100, what do you want? They want to travel.
Right.
Yeah. So when you travel, right now I'm actually loving that fiber is a big topic of discussion, right? People are using that word a lot. But then the problem with fiber is when you go out, sometimes you're going to eat grains that aren't full of fiber. And again, you either could stress out about it or you could do the best you can. So I think it's a mix of two things. One, like you were talking about your kids, but even your kids on the go, it could be anywhere. So much of good nutrition is planning. So I joke that like I'm more of a time management person than a dietitian, right? So much of like for your kids, it's having bars or snacks or whatever smoothies, whatever you want to do that's quick. And there's a handful of different things you could do. And like maybe it's in their backpack the night before. Maybe it's like you give it to them in the car or whatever is their mode of transportation, but you give them something so that they can have it on the go. It still can be whole and real food, but the effort is actually in the planning in advance to make sure that 2-minute handoff is quick.
Yeah.
I fall short there daily.
But it is this whole like habit change or process change, that you talked about earlier. And Jen and I were talking before we got on the phone about, I always love running experiments, and I'm running an experiment right now, and it's very macro oriented, but I already thought I was like keyed into all of that. But now I do have to plan the night before, and I end up copy pasting the same meal because it's easier than making it up on the fly. And it is a habit difference now than what I was doing 10 weeks before.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I know that's been a big thing for me. Like I was not a lunch eater for 30 years plus. I didn't like it. I like breakfast food. And so I went so long without eating lunch. And I still don't like to eat lunch, but now I know if I plan ahead and I've made some like tuna salad or something that sits in the fridge that I might just go take 4 bites of. And then an hour later might go back and take 4 more bites, or put a cracker in it or some carrots or something else that is on hand. And so I've become to appreciate that more and more. I try to do it on Sundays, like Sunday, okay, I'm going to make some lunch, quote unquote, lunch food for myself for the week.
Right.
Because I'm a grazer during the day. Yeah. I don't want to stop and eat a meal, but if it's there and ready, I will go get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is having it all in there. But I think there's also, at least for me in the last few years, there's this mind shift that I love food. And so there's sometimes I'm eating out, like we were out to dinner the other night, and I'm eating because I love the taste of the food. But there's sometimes I'm actually eating just because I need the fuel. I understand the science well enough to know I actually need to get protein, carbs, and fat in. And so I don't really care what it tastes like. Like I'm just eating this thing for the fuel. And then my dinner is going to be my fun thing. So there's a little bit of pre-planning that stuff, like you're talking about the tuna fish. And you just know you're doing it because your body needs it and your brain needs it. And it is like filling your gas tank literally with the fuel. And that's it.
Yes. And again, I've had clients who, don't like breakfast or don't like dinner, or, they're trying to hit their protein goals right now. Right. And they're like, I'm like gagging when I eat. Like, I obviously don't want anyone to do that. And if you're doing that, something has gone awry. But to your point, Lindsley, yes, like food should never be like gag worthy, but sometimes food is like, I need to take 5 minutes and put some nutrition in my body because I need it now to support me later. Or like, I need to eat this now because I know if I don't eat now, even though I'm not hungry right now, if I don't eat now, I'm going to be so screwed in a couple of hours. Right.
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't have to be this like full blown masterpiece every meal, but it should be enough to satiate you. And again, I say this line all the time too, right? Like, I wish people could leave a session with me and have the endorphin rush that they have after seeing a personal trainer, right? But
Yeah.
they're just not going to. It's just
Yeah.
never going to happen. And so, but in an ideal world, when you're eating those meals, even if they're not the most flavorful, ideally you're eating them and you're saying to yourself, like, I am nourishing my system right now. Like,
Yeah.
I am giving my body what it needs right now. And that has a positive hormonal impact on your system when you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love too that portable does not equal processed all the time. And I think that that's probably a new takeaway for me. Like, one of my favorite things has become those single packet of almond butters or nut butter of some sort, or
Yeah.
I like peanut butter. So like even the kind of more natural peanut butters, I take one with me all the time. And I just like, sometimes it's just with my finger in the car.
Yeah,
like
totally.
eating
You just
it.
I have just
My
slurped
favorite
those
on the go
suckers
snack
down.
ever.
Yeah. I have completely slurped those suckers down. And, there was, this was a good 10 plus years ago, but I had to give like a presentation in a conference room setting. And it was like very stressful. And it was it was like an all day event. And I knew I was going to be hungry.
Mhm.
And I was like, in my mind, like, how do I make this work? And so, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but I excused myself to go to the bathroom and I had one of those peanut butter packet things in my back pocket. And I basically was just like slurping that down in the hallway so that I had some nutrition in me that when I went back to present, I felt grounded as opposed to like doing a presentation hangry, because then
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to be my best self in that moment. So
Yeah.
yes. Now in a perfect world, right, that has predominantly fat, a smidge of protein. So you'd pair that with a carb, right? So you'd have a piece of fruit or something else like that. Again, getting that nutrition in you is essential so that and ideally you're noticing that you feel better throughout the day, both qualitatively and quantitatively.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about fiber. I feel like fiber is difficult to understand. We don't get
so
enough.
hard to get. It's so hard to get. Like, and I hear of these targets again. Like, one of the ping pong things that we hear is like 25 grams, 35 grams, 10 grams, and it's like, first of all, hitting that target, whatever it is hard unless you're going to jack back like 6, artichokes, which is you can't do. Or so I have to eat a supplement. I got to do like the little powder thing too. So what's a realistic target and how do we get it?
And what is it? Like,
Yeah.
what is fiber?
Yes.
What kinds
Why
of
is it
things?
mission critical now?
What kinds of things are good sources of fiber?
Yeah.
Before we
Yes.
go to a supplement.
Well, the conversation around fiber is so interesting because it's really all stemming from the fact that we are like a carb phobic, carb confused culture, right? So the way this culture works is everyone thinks carbs are bad. So then no one is eating any carbohydrates, but then the foods that sneak into almost all of our diets are processed carbs. So most people are actually eating a good amount, if not too many carbs, but they're not eating carbs that have fiber in it. So it's like this wiggle, like if we could just as a culture say, carbs are actually really good for you when eating ones that have fiber, and everyone could just go, okay, then like all the rubbish would be gone. But because you say the word carb and people freak out, now the word fiber is being used. I actually like it because the amount of times I tell people to eat a carb and they freak out on me is just so unpleasant that now I just say fiber. So what
Okay.
is fiber? Fiber is in all plants. So anything that is a plant, so vegetable, fruit, grain, starchy vegetables, nuts and seeds, anything that came from the earth is a plant. Every plant has fiber, different amounts, and that fiber is the part of the plant that's undigestible by humans. So it never goes into our bloodstream.
Okay.
Does it like
However,
scrubbing stuff out from the inside? Is it like a
that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Roto-rooter.
Okay.
That's right. So the benefits of fiber are that immense cleaning out of our guts and our digestive systems. It grabs toxins, it grabs cholesterol, it grabs all sorts of things that we don't need and pulls them out so that we don't use them. The other thing, and this, again, I have so many like black and white moments in my life that changed my behavior forever. So I'll tell this story. If it impacts someone, I'd be thrilled. For some reason, this isn't as powerful to everybody else as it is to me. But like a major thing about fiber is the healthy bugs in our gut that are all the rage these days. Everyone talks about gut. Well, the only thing those healthy bugs need is fiber. That's what they live off. So like, I've never understood the intensity of the keto craze that talk about gut health. Cause I'm like, how can you be keto and have enough fiber to have the short chain fatty acids that are feeding your healthy gut? You have to have fiber. So the USDA recommends 25 grams for women and 38 grams for men. I will tell you, I recommend 30 to 40 grams for everybody. So, and I'm going to say one thing before you go, just one more thing. Fiber would not be that hard to hit if you ate starch, not you two in particular, if the world wasn't afraid of starches. So if you had beans, if you ate whole wheat, if you ate, like corn is the devil to people. If you ate good quality corn this summer, if you ate peas, if you eat fruit, there's people who are afraid of fruit. If you ate good quality carbohydrates, it wouldn't be that hard to hit 40 grams. Where it gets difficult is if you were on a super, super low carb diet, then it's going to be hard to hit those numbers.
Okay. Because I think I end up getting it from stuff like green apples. I love green apples, and they've got a lot of fiber.
Green apples, great.
Artichoke, hearts, and salads. One thing that surprised me is I thought lettuce would have a lot of fiber. It doesn't.
Yeah. So that's the talk. And the reason, it's just a caloric level, right? The reason vegetables, and this is all a great conversation, because again, people we think things. So are vegetables good for you? 100%. But there's two main reasons why vegetables are good for you. They're all full of phytonutrients, right? Like every color has different nutrients, and they're almost all water, which makes it super high volume, meaning you feel full, but you don't take on the calories. So when you're trying to fill a plate up and you want to feel satiated at the end of that plate, but you still want to support weight loss, filling your plate up with a third to a half of vegetables is going to help reach those goals. However, they're predominantly water, and water isn't fiber.
Yes.
So you have to eat food that has some calories in it, because most of those are what have the fiber.
I think the other place that I found a lot of the fiber was when you said beans, like that kachari dish I always talk about, the lentils. Like those are really good fiber.
So legumes are wonderful. They're the most bang for your buck is beans and lentils. At my job, it is, a joke at how the dietitians constantly are telling people to eat more legumes, because everyone's just like, oh my God, stop it. But I'm not a big superfood, but if there's a superfood out there, it is definitely beans and lentils.
I'm thinking about the favorite summer salad that I'm actually in charge of making. I only make about 2 or 3 things. My husband does all our cooking. But my summer salad is the one thing I have to make. And I'm just looking across, we're in my kitchen right now. I'm just looking across at, it is basically beans and corn and avocado and all mixed together with some onions and jalapeno. But I'm like, check, yes. And I eat it for lunch the next day. Check. I'm just checking all the boxes right now. I'm so excited.
And so again, you could buy those ingredients in a can. You could buy those ingredients frozen. You could buy those ingredients boxed and dried. No matter what you're doing, those would all work.
Well, it's so funny because I usually use canned beans, and in the summer we grill fresh corn, but in the winter I buy frozen corn because we just don't have, so it is interesting even thinking about some of our habits and some of our favorite foods, how we just adjust based on seasonality and what's available.
And Fiber powders are not bad by any means. I use them. I've actually turned my morning smoothie with the help of my colleague who's a gut expert. I've turned my morning smoothie into I call it at this point, in my head, medicinal food, because I've got all these different fiber powders that I put in there. Again, they're all one ingredient fiber powders. So I still call them whole real foods because I can recognize what they are. But fiber powders are great, and they can be mixed into smoothies. They can be mixed into yogurt. They can be mixed into, oatmeals or chia puddings or stuff like that. So I think it's great. But yes, ideally, you have to eat some carbohydrate-rich foods in order to get the fiber.
Yeah.
And I feel like, this is going to probably be a little bit of an on the spot question. And so we can talk our way through it. I read an article, I want to say it was yesterday or the day before, about the synergies of certain foods together. And it was like whole wheat toast with peanut butter, or
Rice, rice
beans and rice. And so are there certain combinations, especially of carbohydrate, to put with another food that really helps either with digestion, or there's some synergistic effects that we may not get when we eat those foods independently?
Got it. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. I mean, some of what I'm
It was not a
hearing,
scientific article. I will put it out there. It
but
was probably
some of
came out
those,
as like my Apple News feed.
that's fine. But some of those topics really are just going back to the fact that if you look at ancient cultures, how they all lived so well is because they all ate balanced plates, So it wasn't like Asian cultures were just eating rice. They were eating rice paired with soybean, right? And that soybean has protein and that soybean has fat. When you look at how different cultures bring their meals together, none of that was happenstance. I mean, that was primal, and pica is the expression for when people are eating rocks or dirt or paint. But if you go back to the beginning of time, it was almost like people were eating that intuitively to know what they needed, and we've fallen a bit off track. So I think that what's key is remembering that when you're eating, so you just described that beans, corn, and avocado, right? That's a protein in the beans, that's a carb in the corn, and that's a fat in the avocado. That salad that is very common in many cultures, that's not by accident, right? That is because those foods are all in season in the summertime, and those foods are all balance each other out. There is a level of synergy with some micronutrients, like iron and vitamin C work together.
Right.
There's certain things that go against each other. So there's some of those, and that can get a little screwed up with food processing. But for the most part, if you're not doing anything too wacky and you eat a balanced plate, you're usually taking care of yourself.
Right. I think, and that was another perfect example. And that was another example that was in this article, is why culturally we've evolved to put lemon juice on spinach. Is the vitamin C helps you absorb the iron, or when we're trying to absorb fat soluble vitamins, make sure we have some fat in what we're eating.
Yeah. So it's more logic than anything else. But yes, those all work really well together.
So is there anything else that's kind of out there when you think about the news in the last 6 months? Because that's the last time we were talking to Jay, that's either contradictory, hard to reconcile, or we don't really understand what that is about in the news. We talked about fiber. We talked about the dry January and how that goes all the way to tea. Talked about smoked salmon. What are some of the other things that we just needed to reconcile in our minds?
I think that the two things that are coming to me is, especially with some of the political stuff that's going on, right? I think, again, if you just, I'm kind of thinking of this on the fly, but questions to ask yourself, does this actually pertain to me? Am I actually experiencing these symptoms, or am I actually, do I have a data point, or do I even know my data point that would be relevant to be freaked out about this? And then so many of the little ingredients that are being picked up as the devils or the stars of the food chain, can you take it one step deeper and just go, am I eating whole real foods? If you can buy organic, great. If not, totally understand. But if you are eating things that are made of predominantly whole real foods, whether you're eating out, whether you're in a supermarket, whether you're at home, the odds are in your favor that you're going to be okay.
Got it. Okay.
So I want to just kind of close out And then we're going to stay on and go into a topic that we've steered clear of right now, which is our seed oil topic. We're going to save that for a little bonus session. But I just want to kind of go through. I think, one of the biggest things, and we touched on this earlier, but I want to bring it back to this, is this if people take one thing away from this podcast, is please work on your restrictive mindset. Please understand that your body, especially as a midlife woman, needs food.
Mm-hmm.
It needs food. And that ripples. That means our daughters, our nieces, our granddaughters, our friends, they see women eating. And that's the only way we're going to change this culture, is that we embrace each other eating. We enjoy the social components of eating, and we see that our bodies respond to fueling, not restricting.
Yeah. And I think I just piggyback on that with I don't know, I'm 46, so I'm still in it. But I gotta say, this time in your life is just wonderful. I mean, and I read both joke memes as well as have read some articles, but there really is a beautiful hormonal thing that's happening inside of me and all of us that is genuinely making me not care about what other people think anymore, not take on other people's stuff, and feeling the wow, this is it feels like magic going within me. And I am really into it. 46 and not care about my body the way I used to care, stress out about things, not care about what people think. I mean, it's just the most, it's empowering and confidence boosting and joyous, but it's also just calm. It's this is great. So then when I read and I'm being exposed to these restrictive things, it's it feels oh my God, you want to put an eating disorder, a new eating disorder on me?
Yeah.
I'm just letting all of those things go. And there's this new thing that I feel so do we all need to eat fiber and protein and strength train and sleep? I mean, yes, we cannot sit on the couch and eat bonbons and think that, menopause is going to work out well for us.
Yeah.
However, I do think embracing this beautiful time instead of punishing ourselves is maybe probably going to make things worse and probably going to make things better, if both from your blood sugar and your hormones and your weight and your sleep and all these different things that we're trying to fix so much. Yeah.
Well, as always, we love having you here, and we'll have you back again in a few months to recap and refresh. So for those of you that want to stick around and listen to more of what we're going to talk about with Jae here in a couple of minutes, jump on over to Prosper Together, where the rest of this podcast will be. And if not, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. If you liked what you heard and you got some tips on how to live better right now and for the long haul, please help us reach more midlife women. Please share and rate and like this show, and we can't wait to continue the dialogue with you on our next episode. Until then, thank you. It's time.